Hey everyone, welcome to Monday Morning Breakthroughs. I am so glad you're here. I'm Laura DeFranco, the CEO of Brave Healer Productions, and I am here with our guest, Tina Green, to talk about how to say no to people pleasing. I really love that topic. She's also Brave Healer Productions' newest Amazon best-selling author. Congrats to all of the expert authors who are part of the life-changing power of self-love and essential guide. We're having a really fun day today because we're recording this on launch day, which is crazy. So we hope that you'll go pick up your copy of that amazing book today. You guys, Tina Green believes that when a woman learns to truly love herself, everything changes and anything is possible. Tina is the founder and transformational coach at Exposing the Roots, a best-selling author, ordained minister, celebrant, and ceremonialist. Tina guides women in cultivating their self-love through coaching, breathwork, ceremony, and initiations. And of course, for later, I've got her hooked up with all of her channels and links down below for you. So, Tina, you have 20 minutes to give us a breakthrough, girl. All you.
All right. Thank you, Laura. I'm excited to be here today and on launch day. It was kind of crazy to do that, but it's good energy, good self-love energy. Okay. So people pleasing. I am a people pleaser in recovery. And so, from my own experience and path, I want to share that with you. I want to share my wisdom with you. And when I shifted my people pleasing ways, it brought me home to myself and gave me so much freedom in my life. And it shifted a lot in how I interact with everybody, and it shifted a lot in my family. So, that's what brings me to want to teach and share about people pleasing, because I've done a lot of work on it myself. I'm also passionate about helping people cultivate their self-love. And really, people pleasing is a big part of what we're trained to do. And it's a big way that we don't love ourselves and we constantly abandon ourselves. So that's my reason for sharing this topic today on the launch day of the life-changing power of self-love. So a people pleaser is a person who has the emotional need to please others, often at the expense of their own needs and their own desires. So people pleasing is actually a form of codependency. And the way I think of codependency is, when you are focused, when you have all your energy focused outside of yourself, and you're really always looking outside of yourself for love, for attention, for acknowledgement, for approval. And while you're doing that, while you're always focused outside of yourself, you're abandoning yourself. And I feel like that's my way of thinking about codependency. And it's really your relationship with yourself is out of balance. So people pleasing is just so dominant among women in particular, because we are really trained at a very young age to be people pleasers, and we really, in a way, train ourselves to learn how to cope. This is how I get my needs met, by pleasing other people. So raise your hand if you think you're a people pleaser. And then what if you think you're a people pleaser in recovery? Yeah. So great. So we're going to focus on awareness today, because there's a lot about being a people pleaser that when I first really dug into it, I didn't know all the ways I was doing that. So I'm going to really share some what is some of the behaviors of a people pleaser. But before I do that, I want to say that people pleasing starts really early in our life. And I'm going to come back to this a little bit more, But, when we were a little baby, a little child, we so brilliantly figure out, like, I need the adults in the world to take care of me. And this is what I need to do in order to make that happen. So for a sorry, someone just walked in the room. So for, I need to please this person in order to get my needs met, in order to be safe, in order to be okay in the world. And that's really where it starts, is when you're really little. So sorry about that interruption. It really distracted me. Some of the behaviors that you'll see in people pleasers, I mean, the most dominant one is they have difficulty saying no. It's really, really hard to say no to people. And, depending on how their that instance was in their childhood, it can actually unconsciously feel dangerous inside to say no. You may not even think about that yourself, but like you're programmed, your operating system from when you were really little, like, I can't say no because that's dangerous. That's not true for everybody, but it's definitely there and can be true. On the opposite side, saying yes is reflexive. They say yes to everything without even thinking about whether I want to say yes or not, whether or not it's something that I want. So, someone asks you to go for a walk, you say yes. Someone asks you to take on this big new project at work, you say yes. This yes, 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 constantly. It's a reflex to say yes. And in all these ways, when you're not considering yourself, you're really abandoning yourself as a people pleaser. A people pleaser is always kind of operating from the place of, who do I need to be in order to please you? Have your approval or be okay. Like, who do I need to be? And you're always, as a people pleaser, giving people what they want, not who you are, but what they want. And like, you watch a movie with someone, and then they're like, oh, I love that movie. Wasn't that great? And you didn't really think it was great, but you're like, yeah, that was great. Or, that kind of thing. Or like if you go to a restaurant where you didn't really like the food, these are really simple examples, but they can really extend everywhere. But if you don't like the food and whoever you're there with loves it and is raving about it, and you really want them to like you. So you're like, yeah, this is great. I love this place. But you really don't. There's like so many little ways that we do this. Sorry, I need to make sure I cover everything on my notes here. So, you can also, people pleasers also, this is something I used to do a lot, really, really, really a lot, and maybe sometimes I still do to a certain extent, is that when I was at work and my boss would say to me, can you do this? Can you take on this new project? Can you take on this new thing? And I'm already overwhelmed, but I say yes. But I say yes. And then I'm even more overwhelmed, right? And there I go, abandoning myself again. So does anybody know what that results in when you do that? Like, what happens after you say yes to something like that? Can you burn out? I see that. Yeah, that's definitely one of them, burnout. What other feelings can come up? Resentment. Yeah, that's a good one. Resentment and burnout are two main ones. And also, when you're a people pleaser, it leads to inauthentic relationships. So whoever you're relating to that you're trying to please, it's really inauthentic. And I hate to say it, but it's also dishonest, because you're not really speaking your truth. You're not showing yourself. You're being who you think they want you to be. So it's also manipulative. I know this sounds harsh, but it is. It's, it's inauthentic and manipulative. And for me, when I learned this, it was like that landed like a knife in my heart. Like, I'm like, oh my God, all these years I've been not being my authentic self. And I've been manipulating the situation just for people to like me, to accept me, to approve of me, to acknowledge me. And, people pleasers can be like a chameleon because they are shifting to whoever they're trying to please, they're shifting to what they think that person wants to see. So it also creates a void, as you can imagine, when you're constantly leaving yourself and you're not home and you're always looking outside of yourself, what does that leave here? That leaves a void that you need to fill. So we all know some of the ways that we can fill that void through obsessions, addictions, eating, whatever. There's so many ways to fill a void, and people pleasing definitely leaves a big void. So where does people pleasing come from? Oh, sorry, a couple more. So people pleasers also avoid conflict. So, and this was something that I used to do a lot too. I always wanted to keep the peace. I always wanted to keep harmony. So I was always kind of gauging what was going on in the room and how I could keep peace and harmony and how I could be whatever was needed in order to do that. So avoiding conflict and being afraid to poke the bear, is a big a big part of people pleasing. And I want to bring it back to safety. And this is an unconscious thing, that safety, people pleasers are always trying to be like, how can I be okay in this situation? How can I be safe in this situation? And am I okay with you right now? You know, those are the kind of unconscious thoughts that are going on with a people pleaser. And safety is a big part of it. Where did it come from? I mentioned earlier that we are trained, especially as women, we are trained to be people pleasers at a really young age. We're not only trained, but we figure it out for ourselves, right? And then that lives with us. That was our coping mechanism that became part of our operating system. So and the underlying emotion with people pleasing is fear. So there is a fear, if I don't do what I think they want, what will happen? Will they reject me? Will they abandon me? Will they not like me? Will a conflict happen? So fear is really an underlying emotion. I don't deserve to say no. I don't have the right to say no. It's not safe to tell you what I really think. Those are all really underlying in people pleasing. And again, to some people, they have that unconscious, you know, it goes beyond safety for some people where it might feel dangerous, right? So what does it create in your life when you're a people pleaser? Oftentimes you feel resentful. We brought that up earlier. So for me, when I had that dynamic of always taking on projects when my plate was already full and running over, I would then turn around and feel resentful towards that person and be pissed off about it. When in reality, it was me who took it on, made the decision, and didn't speak up for myself, didn't say, well, I could do that if this other thing was taken off my plate, or, that kind of thing. But you could be frustrated a lot. It causes anxiety, stress, burnout. and eventually depression. And that's kind of what I experienced too, personally, is kind of a low grade depression for years, because this is how I was operating. I was constantly not home. And, it also is as I mentioned before, an inauthentic way of being, and can really affect your relationships, especially intimate relationships. Think about like sex and being a people pleaser, right? You know, First of all, you're always saying yes. And then second of all, you're kind of, you know, maybe faking it just to please the other person. And so it can really infiltrate your relationships pretty heavily. So I was wanting to raise awareness and what it means to be a people pleaser and the different ways it can kind of infiltrate your life, and hopefully that has resonated with some of you. And so, what does it look like to be in recovery from people pleasing? The first step is always awareness. It's always in any kind of change you want to make in your life, is really becoming aware of what is happening for you. And then once you're aware, you can step forward in, you know, becoming more aware and really noting where this comes up in my life. But really, being in recovery means coming home to yourself, you know, and you realize this during this awareness. You realize, like, oh, that was my way of being that I created to cope, but it's no longer serving me. And that's a big awareness too, like, what is no longer serving me in my life now that I needed when I was, a child. And it's important when you're in recovery to give yourself lots of grace, because you did come by this honestly. As Stephanie once taught me, is that you come by it honestly. When you're a child, it's brilliant. It's a brilliant way of coping when you're a child. But now as an adult, it's holding you back. It no longer serves you. And so in recovery, giving yourself lots of grace, because it's not your fault, but it's something that you're taking on and trying to shift. An important part of, you know, people pleasing is really becoming your own ideal loving parent. And this may be a new concept to you, but you can really look at, like, what was I needing? What do I need in this moment? And what is it, constantly asking yourself when you're presented with opportunities, like, do I really want to do this? And what do I need in this situation? And, you know, really, when you're becoming your own parent, you're growing up those parts of you that never had the chance to grow up, right? So asking yourself what you need is a really important part of that. You're becoming emotionally mature when you do that, and you're really calling your soul back, because you're really calling back those parts that you've been abandoning over and over and over in your life. So when you're in recovery, also, it doesn't mean that you're done. It's kind of, something that, when you have a lifelong pattern like this, it becomes a habit, right? So really, awareness, constant awareness, is an important part of, changing habits. And I would even recommend, like, when you notice things, writing them down, because that's really heightens the awareness. But you can also get triggered. You might have made a lot of improvements. You took care of all the low hanging fruit of the ways that you people please, right? You feel freedom. You're like, oh, this is so much better. This is such a better way to live. And then something really stressful happens and you get triggered. You get triggered into it again, and you become that little kid who wasn't getting their needs met. And I think that's always just really important to remember. And the more aware you become, and the more you're focused on it, you can come out of that place faster. You can recognize it. You're like, oh, okay, I reacted this old way again. And you can, come back and correct it. But you can always get triggered, especially if you're in, going through a hard situation or a hard time. It's, something really stressful. So, what I'm going to recommend if you are a people pleaser is to really get in the habit of pausing before you say yes, of pausing and really checking in with yourself. Is this what I really want? And is how does, how does this serve me? And really ask yourself those questions before you go ahead and say yes. And when you start saying no, it can become like really empowering, like, oh, I said no to that and it felt so good. That's really what I have today, Laura.
Awesome. Thank you. There were a lot of real golden nuggets in what you presented today. And if people are taking this chat today and using it as that awareness tool that you mentioned, it's going to change things. And I loved what you said. Well, I loved a lot of things about what you said today, but I loved that we give ourselves some grace in in recovering from that.
Mhm.
We can be so hard on ourselves for like not doing what we said we were going to do with it, but really it's just we have to keep being kind to ourselves in that recovery process. And I appreciated that piece. So any last words for people who are on this self-love journey? What's the most important thing you want to leave them with today?
Really, self-love is a practice. As I said, even for, people pleasing is, part of that, but self-love is a practice. And you can really have breakthroughs in your self-love, but it will continue to come up throughout your life. And it's a relationship with yourself that you have to tend to, just like any other relationship. So there's no point where you achieve self-love and then you're done. It's really a lifelong practice. And I really want to stress that, it's foundational. It's really, in the people that I work with, I see it all the time that like so many of our challenges relate back to self-love. So if we can operate from that foundation, it really does change everything for us.
Tina, thank
Yeah.
you so much for what you do in the world and for being here today to share it in the Monday morning breakthroughs session. You guys, if something resonated today, drop down to the show notes because I have Tina hooked up with her website and all of her links, and you can come into the community, because what I know about what we're doing around here is it's more than just the book that we're launching today. It is generous people and a generous community. So Tina's ready to answer a question, carry on the conversation, help guide you on that next step of your journey. So please explore everything she's up to. Congratulations, Tina, on the life-changing power of
You.
self-love. We're going to have that Amazon link down below for you all as well. And if you want to join us on Zoom for a Monday morning breakthroughs in the future, we have that invite in our Brave Badass Healers, a community for world changers group on Facebook. So please come on over, join the group, check out the events tab. We have 2 really powerful sessions coming up in December and all through the next year for you. Lastly, today, you guys, just remember Brave Healer Productions is here to help you share your brave words with the world in a bigger way and break through to that next level of life and business. So again, check the show notes for all the things that we have going on. But remember, your words change the world when you're brave enough to share them. So it is time to be brave. See you next time.